So this is my first time in Dubai. From Messina, Dr. Saeed, Yolanda, and Kenneth got me here, and I find it to be a very interesting trip. I actually been on a long trip this time. I was in Greece, Spain, London, Italy, and here. I gave a talk at University of Athens at Greece. I gave a talk at Valencia, in Spain. I gave a talk at the London Headache Symposium. I also give a talk in Italy at Bari, at the Anesthesia Pain Society headache chapter. So this is really the same talk. And sure. Okay. Let me do this. Let me speak. Okay, good. Thank you. So as I was saying, so this is the same talk I gave at the London, Italy, Greece, and Spain. Now, I'm pretty informal, so if you guys have any questions, you want to interrupt or any doubts, please raise your hand, just let me know. We can discuss. Since we have a small group, and I'm really glad you guys are here, so I want to address every single questions. Some of the stuff I discuss is not exactly traditional, so it's quite interesting to talk about some of the topic. The method I have here is actually being used in the United States since 2011, but in all major US academic institutions since 2014-ish. Stanford, Yale, Johns Hopkins, one arm of Cleveland Clinic, let me see, University of Texas, all those guys are using the device right now. The current study I'm doing right now is actually done, the protocol was written by Dr. Stuart Tepper, and some of you guys may know him, and the study right now is being PI'd by Peter McAllister, Chris Gaschuk, Robert Cohen, and all those guys. The Army guys, I can't really talk about their names because they, one of the branch in the Army is actually Special Forces guys, so those guys will be different. For this, can you all give me a hand? So obviously I have a little conflict of interest here. I'm the inventor of this device. I champion this thing. But this is really not also about the device. This is, since we have 5 neurologists sitting down here, this is really about sphenopatic dangling. Okay? I know I'm going to talk about the device I make, but I'm actually more interested in the science behind it. because there's a reason behind that, and I think this reason is more important than the device. And for that reason, there are other potential use of the device that we can come up with. The whole point is that sphenopattern ganglion is such an important and interesting structure, and I would like to see its fully therapeutic potential being realized. So we're going to talk about the anatomy and physiology, which is really the most important topic here. Okay, it's not about device, it's about anatomy and physiology of SPG. Pterygopalatine ganglion is the same as sphenopattern ganglion. I have been asked this question before. This is anatomically exactly the same structure, maybe called differently by some books. So this nerve is the largest ganglion outside of cranial cavity. Okay, the reason why I say that is because size matters, right? Since it is the largest ganglion, it has a lot of receptors on it. It has a lot of function to it. We talked about earlier while I was sitting there that this nerve is so complicated. It is not a simple autonomic ganglion. The reason I say that is a simple autonomic ganglion, for example, stating ganglion, right? Stating ganglion is completely synthetic. There's no sensory to it. If you block stating ganglion in SGB, you're not going to create any kind of a sensory loss over the skin. And SPG is not like that. SPG actually has a sensory component because facial nerve pass through this structure. In addition, V2, the maxillary nerve division of the trigeminal nerve, also has some sensory nerve responsibilities. So this is not entirely autonomic ganglion. It does have mostly parasympathetic responsibility. It also has some sympathetic responsibility that contributes to the cardiac region. Now that is actually a very important concept. The reason is when I was at the University of Athens, that was really just 2 weeks ago, that was my first stop on this trip. The local university actually held a small conference when I was there for my arrival, and I didn't know, unbeknownst to me, that the cardiologist at the University of Athens actually published 2 papers in the cardiology journal that showed a sphenopalatine ganglion nerve block had reduced patients with treatment-resistant essential hypertension. It's quite interesting that it was published. And that was really to my surprise. And I kind of always suspected that due to a clinical reason, which I'll discuss a bit later on. But that really shows how anatomically important and diverse this structure is. Okay? The structure retrograde connects to the trigeminal nucleus, both ipsilateral and contralateral. This is very important. This has something to do why we perform this nerve block. We should always perform this nerve block bilaterally. This also explains, by the way, for cluster headache. So we all know for acute onset cluster headache in acute phase, bilateral occipital nerve block works. We know single one-sided occipital nerve block does not work for cluster headaches. We know that, right? Because this is well published, well discussed. And even though cluster headache is usually only one-sided. Now, why is that? This is actually the reason. Because both occipital nerve and SPG, they send signal to trigeminal nucleus, ipsilateral and bilaterally. That's why when you're doing this nerve block, you gotta do bilateral. It's a neuroanatomy requirement. It's not based on symptoms. We already talked about this, so let's skip that. So again, this is such an important nerve, but this important nerve is not covered by bony boundary. So this creates a very interesting situation. This is if you think about the human body, this is the only ganglion we know that is not protected by a piece of bone. It is in fact exposed to thin air by a very thin 1 to 1.5 millimeter thick mucous membrane. Is located posterior to middle ligament. What that means is it is actually exposed to potential external influence. Okay? that gets very interesting. In fact, it's so interesting that we have two companies we know. One is Autonomic Technologies, right? They're from Palo Alto in actually Redwood, California, which is the Palo Alto area. Thanks for looking at my video. And then, so in that case, what ATI did was they were inserting a electrical stimulator, okay, into the sphenopattern ganglion for the purpose of doing inhibition and for headaches. But there's another company which is also very interesting. It's an Israeli company called BrainsGate. BrainsGate, since 1990s, what they've been doing is sphenopattern ganglion stimulation for the purpose of stimulation. In that case, what they're looking for is an increase of permeability of blood-brain barrier and an increase of the cerebral vasodilatation. And that is why I'm so interested in this. Both companies right now don't have exactly very positive results. ATI is very close with the FDA, but BrainsGate, I'm not sure what they are right now in human trials. In dogs, they are successful. What's important to know about this is, if you think about this, this nerve is separated from thin air with such a thin mucous membrane that will give us an opportunity to manipulate this nerve. Medical ganglion nerve block. Now technically, sphenopalatine ganglion nerve block is trigeminal nerve block, okay? Because this is V2. Trigeminal nerve block itself is performed slightly differently. We go from the front, and this is slightly more invasive. Occipital nerve stimulator, as you know, has been discussed and tested over the years by 3 major stimulator companies, namely Medtronic, Boston, and St. Jude. And so far, the results are not good, so that's why we don't really use it. But in some institutions, for example, at the University of Illinois Chicago, Dr. Slavin do use this for cluster headaches in some cases. Botox injection is the other treatment that is approved and is accepted to treat migraine headaches. This is effective in some patients. You have some 15% to 20% of super responders. Now, as you know, this technique will require about 30 minutes of injections every 3 months. So this is a total of 155 units of Botox. The sphenopattern ganglion stimulator implant by ATI I discussed earlier. So let's look at a possible easier answer. So here's the thing, as a clinician, I like to play with instruments. I like to do something on my own. I like to take matter into my own hands, right? Oral medication or a prescription for CGRP means I write a prescription and patient will come back to see me in 1 year. So right now the CGRP prescribing mode is, here's a prescription, come back to see me in 1 year and let's see if this works or not. Because it takes 3 to 6 months for that to work. And the ATI's implant is not here yet. Occipital nerve block doesn't really work for migraine. And when I perform trigeminal nerve block or the SPG nerve block with a needle, I will need to go to OR, and this thing gets a bit more complicated. So I'm looking at this, I'm thinking, okay, maybe we can create a way of performing this nerve block much easier. So let's look at the old technique. In 1908, Dr. Sluder talked about doing this with Q-tips. At that time, people were very happy. They were performing this with cocaine. So the efficacy, needless to say, was 100%. Can you imagine this? Everybody with headache goes to Dr. Sluder and his comrades, they get cocaine. My God, we have resolved this issue completely. By 1920, in the United States, people are addicted on cocaine. And that's when they realized, wait a second, well, you can't do this. So we stopped doing this mostly. Believe me, in some centers in the United States, they're still doing it, especially in one center in New York with cocaine. I don't know how they keep the license, but they're still doing it. So we changed that from cocaine to lidocaine. So here's the problem now. We changed that from cocaine to lidocaine. We realized it doesn't work anymore. It's very interesting, right? We go, well, cocaine works, and lidocaine doesn't work. So what do? We decided to saturate the Q-tips with lidocaine, with the viscous lidocaine, with 2 of them. And we put So 2 and 2, total of 4 Q-tips in the patient's nose, and leave it there for 30 minutes. So patient in supine position, you have this thing in the nose for 30 minutes. And in that case, how much does that work? There was a study done at Taiwan that showed it's about 50-50, it's a flip of coin. So even with that, it's really a flip of coin whether or not that works. So then we said, okay, let's look at this from a surgical perspective. How about I just cut it out? So we did this. In 1970 and even 1980s, we performed surgical resection of sphenoparietal ganglion. This was accepted back then. So neurosurgeon and ear, nose, and throat surgeon, ENT surgeons, what they do is they cut a patient's head, they take patient face down, they take out the maxillary sinus, they literally remove that like a drawer, they see SPG, they cut it out. They put the drawer back in, they sew everything back together. Okay? It worked. The problem is it takes about 6 months for the patient to heal from the surgery. It takes about 9 months for the nerve to grow back. So ever since the 1990s, they stopped doing this completely. It's just too brutal and it doesn't work. The problem is the nerve grow back. We have neurologists sitting here, we all know that. And also with the ganglion. So ganglion is different from sensory nerve. As an anesthesiologist and pain physician, I do rhizotomies with medial frequency for medial branches. So medial branches are purely sensory nerve. For those nerves, they grow back essentially normal. If you look at all the medial branch radio frequency data, when their pain come back, they don't get that bad. They don't. The nerve essentially come back intact. Ganglion is a different story. Because ganglion, they don't go back normal. They go back aberrant. So they go back in different shape. That means every time you're messing with the ganglion with neurectomy, you're causing problems. And that was the reason why, frankly, when Dr. Siegelstein was talking to me about using Botox on the SPG, I'm not exactly very supportive because I don't know how the ganglion will actually react. Right now, the Botox injection is a peripheral nerve, and I think those nerves will come back intact. In this case, I'm not so sure. So this is a technique we developed. Dentists were doing this, okay, greater palatal form approach. And they don't do this anymore. Part of the reason is because mouth is a very dirty place, and they get a bit scared on this, and I would agree with them. This is a technique I was doing during my fellowship, and I actually still do this sometimes for refractory patients. So what we're doing here is a patient supine. Patient have to be awake, right? Because we cannot inject medication into CSF. So what a nerve is a very close to Merkel's cave, and a Merkel's cave contains CSF, cerebrospinal fluid. If we accidentally inject local anesthetic into the CSF, it can shut down the patient's cardiopulmonary system. So that's immediate cardiac arrest. But having said that, this is a relatively safe procedure to do. Now you're going to ask, well, you're going to do one nerve block. How long does that last? That's a very good question. It doesn't. One nerve block will last about the length of the active phase of the local anesthetic, so a few hours. Okay, and that's the reason why we decided that, well, let's make that last. So what do? We inject alcohol or phenol, okay, under fluoroscopy. And in this case, we're able to control patient pain a little longer, except alcohol and phenol gets really dangerous because it spreads everywhere. And the other possibility is to do radio frequency. So we did this. And if you talk to all the experts in the world, and I was just in Italy, and we were talking about this, doctors who do radio frequency. What we have seen is when we perform radio frequency technique, the first time it works very well. The second time it works about 50%. Okay. The third time it doesn't really work. Why? Because the nerve come back aberrant. So we really only do this for patients with trigeminal nerve compression, okay, for trigeminal neuralgia patients. So in this case, surgeon will come in to do trigeminal nerve decompression surgery. Okay. Here's the QT method. Here's what's interesting about QT method. I'm so sorry. Everything okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Headache?
Yeah. So
You
you have a time.
I don't have a license in this state. I don't want to get arrested. And we're on video.
She has small nose.
Okay.
You're gonna do it for her, but not her. That's for her.
All right, I'm going to stop for a second and we're going to.
Maybe if you switch to there, this way, so can everybody see. Or since we have small group, maybe we did it in the first chair here.
We can do it over here.
You need to put your head against the wall. You need to put your head on the wall.
Okay. So we can come together.
This is better. We need support.
You like it.
Like
Great.
No video.
You want to take with you?
Because if I want do we have candy?
I have candy. Here's
So the medication is absolutely important. And he showed it. Q-tips are the apex of nasal cavity. Okay? And this is, again, in our textbook. Q-tip is the apex of nasal cavity. Except, that doesn't exist. This is what's interesting, right? Our textbook sometimes is not necessarily right. See? This is the apex of nasal cavity. The drawing conveniently left out sphenoid sinus. It's a pretty obvious mistake. And also, it's a 3D dimension. But let me tell you how interesting this is. When I was doing my patent application in 2004, I have come across patent application by Dr. Bruce Levine from New York. And that whole project was supported by AstraZeneca. Huge money was spent. And you know how they did it? They did it completely based on this. They actually talk about apex nasal cavity. It never worked. They did this in 1990s. It's very interesting how a tiny mistake is never caught over 100 years. It's kind of insane. So that's the reason why the Q-tip never worked. In order for Q-tip to work, the Q-tips have to come here, right, above the floor of the nose at the exact length and take a superior 90-degree turn. And then somewhere in the air, take a 90-degree lateral turn. That is some pretty smart Q-tips. Okay? So, needless to say, that's the reason why the lidocaine viscous on Q-tip never worked. So, let's look at a migraine. What if I can do this nerve block repetitively for the purpose of neuromodulation? The neuromodulation is key. And neuromodulation is also the fancy new word we've been talking about ever since the arrival of a spinal cord stimulator in the 1970s. Okay? And the issue is you can do nerve block repetitively. Okay? I do stellate ganglion nerve block for reflex sympathetic dystrophy patients. We stick needle in the neck. We know that if we do the nerve block repetitively, frequently enough, there's a cure. For some of those patients, it will catch them early. However, we never catch them early, that's the first thing. And second thing is, we can never do that frequently enough. Sorry. And this thing is just moving on its own, I think. Can you probably go back to the same page? As Candace is fixing the slides, so we're going to talk about neuromodulation issue. So the idea is, what if I can do repetitive nerve block for the purpose of neuromodulation? In order to do that, I have to be able to do that with very little medication without any side effects, which is what you have just seen was a total of 0.6 cc's of local anesthetic. The reason why that's important is because at that dose, I will not cause local anesthetic toxicity. That's the first thing. I will not cause I will not cause what you call the gag reflex inhibition. Gag reflex inhibition takes 2 cc's of local anesthetics. Okay. As an anesthesiologist, if I have a patient with gag reflex inhibition, they cannot go home for about 90 minutes. In that case, I let the young girl go immediately because we give only 0.6 cc's. Okay. The same thing with bupivacaine, by the way. And also, just put things in perspective. When you have a straw goes into a cup, the liquid that comes out from the straw, every drop is a 0.2 cc's. So 0.3 cc is literally 1.5 drops. Okay. So let's talk about chronic migraine. Looks a bit difficult to fix. And yeah, maybe we start with. So, yeah. So if you look at chronic migraine, as we know now, is really a disease of autonomic dysregulation. What happens with chronic migraine patients, as we have, this is something we have all known over the past 10 years, being accepted by the scientific community, that chronic migraine, they have a hyper-excitable parasympathetic state, right? Because cranially, the dominant nervous structure is parasympathetic system. So chronic migraine headache, what happens is much easier for their system to be overstimulated and as a result causing pain. One example is coffee drinkers. People who drink coffee a lot, let's say Italians, right? They drink coffee a lot. When they stop drinking coffee, they have rebound headaches. Why? Because they train their brain that way. Okay? It's already rewired that way. So they have to go through weaning process in order for them not to have that issue. Migraine patients are a little bit different. Migraine patients are this is DNA-based issue. So for migraine patients, they are genetically predisposed, right? So the idea of migraine is that we need to protect certain member of our society. And this is probably the reason why migraine is more prevalent in the Middle East by really hot desert, or Northern Europe by where it's really cold. So in these two regions, the ancient people, they need to go out, right? They live in the caves. They also need to go out to hunt, to gather, and they have to make sure, so the evolution or creation, they have to make sure that enough people stay in the cave to survive. So that's how the migraine is we forcefully make some people stay in the cave to survive. And this is probably the reason why there are a lot more female to male in migraine patients. The ratio is anywhere from 3 to 4 to 1 to almost as much as 10 to 1. And this is also the reason why in Northern Europe, migraines have such a high incidence. Chronic migraine is worse. Chronic migraine is about 10% of migraine patients. Okay, so chronic migraine patients, you're looking at the reason why they have this. And this is such a new term. Really, chronic migraine situation occurred in the past 20-some years, ever since the introduction of triptan. In the United States, this is a much worse condition than any other country, probably because of the use of opioids. So what we know now is that triptan and opioids, they are actually the trigger and cause of chronic migraine. So they have a lot worse situation compared to other migraine patients. So chronic migraine patients, they definitely have a hyper-excitable parasympathetic state, much worse than migraine patients, which is the reason why I chose them. So we're going to talk about neuromodulation here. So the idea is we can neuromodulate. Perhaps we can neuromodulate these migraine patients by nerve block, and as a result, we can retrain their brain, and we can bring the threshold down, so the next headache threshold is much harder to come. This is not a cure. Okay, the idea is we want to train. We cannot cure it because it's a DNA-related condition. It's genetic, so we cannot cure it. 50% severity
Reduction, okay.
But the most important,
I mean, the studies, what they show is not immediate. So they give you now one after 3 months, one after 3 months.
Yes.
So after the second or the third cycle,
yes.
then you need not give for the next 8 months or 9 months sometimes.
Yes, sometimes.
So you are talking about that study, your percentage is maybe in the first 3 months? You're talking?
For the Botox at the time, yes.
So, I mean, we are talking same like you telling after say 3 cycles, then it should be better than 2 days.
We don't have that study out yet. Botox, I know they're doing that, but I don't think this double-blind randomized. It's too costly to be double-blind randomized. I'm talking about other products, right? Basically, what happened is this: FDA looked at everything based on not only science but also marketing it. The problem with chronic migraine is that there's nothing. There was zero. There was nothing. When Botox come out, before Botox come out, there was zero. Nobody knew what to do for chronic migraine patients. Ever since IHS, International Headache Society, and AHS classified chronic migraine, and they realized the cause of chronic migraine is migraine medication. That's what they realized. Okay, this is a complete paradox. The cause of CM are migraine medications. When that happens, we don't know what to do with them. We had no idea. So what they were doing is they were just giving this patient opioids because we had nothing. And then with the opioids, now we have another problem: MOH, medication overuse headache. So that's another topic, and now everybody, we don't know what to do with it. In the United States, MOH is a huge problem. Again, in Europe, it's a much less problem. Okay, because we use too much opioids. The whole progression is you have migraine patients, and we're treating them. If you think about this way, it's essentially we have to understand. Well, we have to understand, but this is what happens: is migraine is really not an illness. Migraine is a condition. That's the bottom line. Migraine is a genetic condition that we have to. We kind of have this for the purpose of preserving about 10% of our tribes to survive. That's what it is. When we're messing with it, when we're trying to control this, we're kind of messing with the nature, right? So what are we doing with cluster headaches? I mean, what are we doing with the triptans? Is we're using triptans to treat these patients, and you kind of messing with their genetic predisposition. And then some patients respond very well, and they go on their lives, they take triptan every once in a while. And then we realize when they take triptan too much, they kind of have more and more frequency headache attacks, and their treatment medication increases. And then finally they have chronic migraine. This is what happened about 10 years ago in the States, is we go, wait a second, this is actually causing a problem, but at the same time we don't know what to do with it. So what do? Let's just freeze the entire muscle. Because we know if the entire muscle is frozen by Botox, then there shouldn't be any improvement. Actually, who did it first was Dr. Pablo, the doctor from Italy. Dr. Pablo, he was the president of the European Headache Federation. He actually started doing that. And a lot of doctors also started doing that before Allergan. It turns out it was successful, so they did a study. When they did a study, actually was happy with it because there was no choice. There was nothing. So that's the reason why we all know the initial Botox study really wasn't that great. It wasn't. But FDA said, let's just approve this because we don't know what to do with it. Okay.
Can you stay close to the microphone? Because I think it's getting hard for some.
Sure. So I'm going to go to the slide we were in. Typical facial pain, cluster headaches. I was not able to do study for typical facial pain and cluster headache. We had some case reports, but not true study. The reason is it's just too few patients. Trigeminal neuralgia is a different story. You got to remember, at least 50% trigeminal neuralgia are due to a mass lesion with a physical mechanical compression of trigeminal nerve. In those patients, this will not work, okay, because they have mechanical issue. So a true trigeminal neuralgia in the classical sense, they should have been seen by neurosurgeon for the removal of the neurovasculature compression or for the tumor compression or even treating multiple sclerosis, because we know multiple sclerosis can cause bilateral trigeminal neuralgia due to the lesion, due to the plaques. Okay. Having said that, I'll tell you a little fun thing, a fun incident about last week. I was in Bari, Italy, giving a talk. There was a young lady who's the chief of anesthesiology department at the local university, and she has trigeminal neuralgia, classic trigeminal neuralgia patient. She has neurovascular compromise. Okay, she comes to see me. She goes, you know, there's no way I'm gonna do this surgery. Okay, I'm so scared of it. There's no way I'm gonna do it. So can you just give me nerve block and see if that works? I said, listen, it's just not gonna work. And she goes, I don't care. Can you just do it? Okay, I said, okay, fine. I did it. It worked. I was there for 3 days. It lasted, I think, 1.5 days. And pain come back. And I told her, I said, listen, it's just not going to work. It's a symptomatic management. It's not going to work. She goes, I don't care. I'm going to do this to myself every single day, and I'm not going to have that surgery done. Okay? And also, by the way, it turns out she smokes. And we all know one of the biggest reasons for trigeminal neuralgia is atherosclerosis induced blood vessel change that compresses on trigeminal nerve. And I told her, I said, there's a simple solution. Stop smoking. She goes, I'm going to keep on smoking. And she's an anesthesiologist. That is the real life patient we were talking about. In the book, for trigeminal neuralgia patients, if they have a mechanical compression, we should send them to neurosurgeon. We shouldn't be treating them as far as I'm concerned. Okay. So the idea is we may normalize this state by repetitive nerve blocks, okay? And that's the whole point of this whole thing. One nerve block doesn't work. Nerve ablation works for a short period of time. It doesn't last long. So we come up with this device. In this case, as you can see earlier in that left demonstration, for those of you who come a little bit later, I'm sorry you missed that. We had a 12-year-old young girl who had severe head attack. I had to treat her. I couldn't wait because she was really in a lot of pain. And so this lady is actually my salesperson in the States. So patient sitting position, patient head is supported, and the device goes in the patient's nose. We use hard palate as a guide. This soft needle comes out, overpasses, and shoots backwards right where the nerve is. It's so accurate, we're only injecting 0.3 cc's per each side. So people ask me, they go, how do you know you're injecting at the right location? Because we have different sizes of people, different ethnicities, different shape of noses. How do you know that? And also, one thing people didn't ask me is there anatomical variation of where the nerve is? The answer is yes. So the nerve exists behind the middle turbinate, but sometimes it's not directly behind. Sometimes it's a little bit higher, sometimes it's a bit lower. So what happened was I was able to collect enough anatomical data and to show FDA based on mathematical model. When we do this injection, there's a stream of liquid that shoots out. And I'm going to show you a little bit, and also in the video. This catheter, okay, when you spray it really quick, just like your garden hose, when you spray really quick, the tip of garden hose flips. Okay? When that flips, the spray cover square footage increases, and that's what happened here. We were able to show that when I squeeze real quick, this thing drops, and we cover the square footage just at 99.9% of the population based on bell curve. Are there exceptions? Yes, we're going to talk about that in a second.
So that's why that activity.
Diffusion. The problem with diffusion is get reflex inhibition. That's the issue. So the only way to reach it accurately is reverse. That's why when I demonstrated the device earlier, I told everybody, I'm sorry that's how late, but we checked that earlier. That's why I said, when you use the device, I guarantee you're going to do it wrong the first few times. Because this is the opposite of everything we have ever used for syringes. Because in your head, we're all programmed, we're all physicians, we're all programmed to inject forward. Not the case here, this is injecting backwards. Okay? Because we can't reach from anterior to posterior. We can't reach from posterior to anterior. Because the way that was made by either evolution or God is that this is protected from the front. But there's no reason to protect it from the back. Right? It's just, in nature, this is not what happened. So that's why I'm doing something kind of against nature. We're going to attack from behind. Okay?
Go back. If you look at you injecting your colleague there, it's kind of coming from down, angling upward, just around the eyeball or so. But if you look in the drawing there, it's kind of coming from up, injecting down. So,
You're absolutely correct. So when you first enter, so the best thing to do, I'm going to demonstrate in a little bit. Remember the young girl I just did? So what happened was, I entered superiorly, then I flipped horizontally. You didn't see I was too fast, you didn't see my motion. I pushed downward, okay? And the Dr. Abu Bakr can tell you, you have to push it down. The reason you enter this way is because here, the meat, so here's a hard palate, right? The opening is, the human flesh is actually lower than the hard palate. The hard palate is slightly higher. So I can't just straight go in. You're going to be just hitting on the hard palate, on the anterior surface of the hard palate. So you have to go up a little bit and go down. It's for easy access. It's a very, very good observation, by the way. Okay? Any other questions on this?
So the tip will shoot and spray, like you spray the windshield, or how is that work?
That we're going to have to show in life. So it shoots either this side or this side, depending on how you turn. And it's very important because, believe me, I've seen every single mistake as possible by physicians. Because again, this is different. This is not everything I've ever used for syringes. They shoot backwards on the side, okay, with accuracy. Any other questions on this? All right, I'm going to go to the next slide. So, yes, sir.
I think after we finish, maybe we can go back to this demo and do it again in the demo to show how this goes, the technique.
If you want to do a live one, I'll
Sure. It's actually, yeah, we except 3 doctors here who just come, you didn't see it. For the doctor who saw earlier, the young girl, you can kind of see how that works from outside. You'll see that how that works from inside. You want to I can show it on a model. It's easier to show on a model, actually. So the idea is not one nerve block, okay, unless it's ER set. The idea is repetition creates neuromodulation. And neuromodulation creates long-term effect. Okay, that's the point of this. And also, this is not a medicinal intervention. We're not messing with any neurotransmitters here. Okay? We're not messing with adding external chemical in the patient's body and changing their biochemistry. That's not the case, which is the case in triptan. In this case, we're doing a nerve block. Bupivacaine is not responsible for relief of headache. It's not. Bupivacaine is simply there to temporarily freeze the nerve for a little bit. It's the nerve block, it's the function of the freezing of the nerve that's giving us the short-term benefit. And the repetition gives us a long-term benefit. So the frequent question is, why is repetition so important? It's the same thing as you go to the gym and work your biceps. Repetition is important. This is neuroplasticity. And we're going to show that in fMRI later on. Okay? This whole thing is about neuroplasticity, and we're able to change that natural hyperacceptable parasympathetic state. And the idea is to increase the threshold of next headache episode. We cannot cure them. We can prevent the next episode coming too soon. Okay, but we also cannot prevent patient behavior, which we talked about that earlier: chocolate, red wine, and getting drunk, and video games, and so forth. So we did a study on this. We took out a patient with occipital neuralgia or cervicogenic headaches. Okay. And we know that this doesn't work with drug seekers or severe psychiatric comorbidities. And we brought a patient in. And we also have complication in the precautions. So here is an anatomical issue here. If the patient has a tumor in the nose, this is not going to work. Okay? If there's a nasal foreign body polyps, this doesn't work. I get asked these questions a lot. Chronic sinusitis headaches, this does not work for them. It's an infection issue, it's not something that we'll treat for. Obviously, it's a tumor, aneurysm. Here's what's interesting: antiviral medication use. This is something I have found because one of my clinic in Chicago is on the north side, and that's we have a heavy presence of homosexuality over there, and some of them are HIV positive, and antiviral medication causes headaches. This will not work for that. Okay, radiation. If the patient had a radiation for head and neck cancer, the radiation can actually cause damages to trigeminal nerve system. This will not work. Patient who had multiple craniotomies, okay, that's a peripheral nerve damages. This will not work. Patient with increased ICP, I did something interesting. I actually injected Topamax for this because we all know Topamax has some lowering ICP benefits. It actually kind of worked for that, but I don't have a study, so I don't really talk too much about it. But for purely clinical sense, if the patient headache is due to increased ICP, this will not work. One common question: what if patient had a post-trigeminal nerve decompression and they still have headache? Will this work? This is a devastating, okay? I tried it. I say 50-50. Some patient respond, some patient don't. This really shouldn't work. The reason is when they do that, when surgeons do that, the trigeminal nerve itself has some damage to it. Once there's a damage to it, nerve block really don't work because the anatomy is altered. But on the other hand, some of these patients are suicidal. So what you're going to do, you're not going to try. So I tried a few times. If that works, I continue. If that doesn't work, I don't. There is a case report by Dr. Roger Cady that was published. It was exactly this with my device, and he thought that was interesting to publish it. But frankly, case report is meaningless for clinical practice. It's just a fun thing to look at. Okay.
It worked for my patient.
Oh, you did? Yeah, it's a 50. I think it's a 50-50. But again, what you're gonna do? You're gonna just say, well, you know, here's some oxycontin and have fun with it. So I would. We probably should try, but I just can't tell you it will work.
That's fair game.
Good. That's good. That's good. Yeah, maybe it didn't work afterwards, so I don't know. So we talked about why bilateral. For those of you who didn't come, I think I can share slides with any physician who's interested. Okay, we can share the slides. And we always perform bilateral. For the few of you who, I'm sorry, we didn't get introduced to each other. But the reason we do bilateral is because trigeminal nucleus receive information from sphenopatic ganglion, both ipsilateral and contralateral. Okay, so always do bilateral. We have shown the effect lasting 24 hours. So here's one question I get from audience a lot. Bupivacaine lasting 4 to 6 hours. Why does this last 24 hours? So here's the interesting thing about sphenopatic ganglion. Sphenopatic ganglion, remember what I said earlier, it all comes back down to anatomy and physiology. Sphenopatic ganglion is an autonomic nerve. It has sensory functionality to it, but it is mostly an autonomic nerve. Remember SGB nerve blocks? So as an anesthesiologist, when you guys send me the patients for RSD,
we do SGB. Guess how long that SGB lasts? 24 hours. Autonomic nerve takes a while to reset. Okay, it's longer than the duration of local anesthetic clinically, and that's the reason why, and we see no difference here. And the idea is the peptic nerve block for autonomic neuromodulation, so we can look for long-term effect. Oh, I need to mention this. Check blood pressure. So people ask me what kind of side effect I've seen. There is a possibility of self-limiting nosebleed. That's the worst thing I've ever seen. The other issue is blood pressure. The reason we check blood pressure is this. Well, obviously, you don't want to miss hemorrhagic stroke-induced headaches, right? So we check blood pressure. The other issue is chronic cluster headaches and chronic migraine headache. You guys heard me before, so this is really for the 3 new doctors here. Chronic migraine headache and chronic cluster headache patients, they are on, some of them are on chronic use of beta blockers and calcium channel blockers like verapamil. For those patients, you got to remember, as they improve, the beta blockers and calcium channel blockers can actually cause a drop of blood pressure. So that's one of the reasons why you got to check this, because you may have to lower their blood pressure, their beta blocker and calcium channel blockers according to their symptoms and according to their blood pressure. Otherwise, you have syncope episodes, and this is something that's been reported to me in my own patients. Okay. A couple clinical issues. Bupivacaine tastes like vomit. It tastes horrible. So give patients some lifesavers and mean to suck on. In the US, my patients are really very pampered, so they didn't like any discomfort. So we'll give them some candy to suck on before the procedure. We ask patients to blow their nose. So here's a typical question. Wait a second, you just put medication in my nose, and now you want me to blow that out? I mean, how does that work? Well, that's because the medication delivered backwards, remember? So when medication is injected backwards, the air current kind of forces the medication back onto it. Again, this is very different from everything I've ever done for nerve blocks. Okay, it's the opposite. So in the initial study I did with Joe Saper and Roger Katie, we did 2 nerve blocks every week for about 6 weeks, about 12 total injections. Frequency is the key. In clinical practice, if the patient has occipital neuralgia, I also perform bilateral occipital nerve blocks. Okay. Now, remember some of these patients have neck pain, so physiotherapy will be helpful. Here is the first study that was for acute treatment for chronic migraine, and we were able to see there's a significant difference in 24 hours for patients with bupivacaine group and versus normal saline. There was a shortcoming from the study. The shortcoming from the study is I should never use normal saline. The reason is normal saline is actually therapeutically active. Okay, I should have used still water. So in a new study, we use still water right now. But we were able to see an average RS score reduction for bupivacaine group. And this is a cluster headache study done by Dr. Jose Sanchez from Spain. This was just presented this year. This is an open label study, and we were able to show a significant difference for refractory chronic cluster headache patients. Okay, K6 score is reduced by about 8 here. And he also did this for refractory chronic migraine patients with Tx360, and we're able to show a different improvement for K6 score. These 2 abstracts, they're not articles. The article, I think he just finished that. He will submit that, so it's not published yet. But this abstract was presented earlier this year at one of the European headache conferences. So here is the long-term efficacy for double-blinded, placebo-controlled randomized study with Tx360 for chronic migraine. We're looking at 6 months. In this case, we saw 5.7 days of pain reduction lasting 6 months. When we say 5.7 days, it means 5.7 days per month, okay, after treatment on average. And unfortunately, because the sample size was 38, so we did not reach the statistical significance, which I kind of know because this was a pilot study. That's the reason why right now we're doing a 180 patient study with Yale, Stanford, University of Wisconsin, and the U.S. Army. And on top of that, earlier, the U.S. Army was interested because it's relevant for soldiers returning from the war theaters. And in this case, this is actually very interesting. Right? So I did a pilot longitudinal study on fMRI. So I was interested, as was said earlier from the beginning of the talk, is that I was interested in the anatomy and the physiology. I was really interested in manipulating the brain, but I don't have any evidence. I don't know if by doing this inhibition, by practicing inhibition, did I really manipulate the brain? I don't know that. So the only way to know is to do fMRI. And the best patient to test on are MOH patients. Okay? So medication overuse heavy patients, we know they have a brain change. We know that. We know there's a connectivity slowdown of these patients. It is very severe. So I proposed this study. Now my name's not on here because I sponsored it, so my name cannot be on here. So I proposed a study with Johns Hopkins and the University of South Carolina. Johns Hopkins was too expensive to do fMRI. USC has a fantastic fMRI machine. And this guy, Dr. Chris Roden, was there, and he's an fMRI god in that world, so we decided to do it over there. And we were able to see an improvement, right? First of all, we saw an improvement in their headaches. The other thing is we were able to see a connectivity change. So in this case, we were able, and this is published in Headache, by the way, in June of this year, we were able to see there's improved functional connectivity in brain in these patients electrically on the fMRI. Okay. In this study, we saw the left prefrontal cortex connectivity was significantly increased with the cortical limbic system. This is part 1. There's a part 2. The part 2 is not published yet. We were just accepted. Okay, I was literally just accepted. We were told to make revision, and now we just accepted this week. So I think publication is going to be January or February in the Headache Journal. So the second part is more interesting. The second part is we used volumic MRI to look at the structural changes, specifically cortical thickness of patients' brain for MOH patients, okay, for chronic migraine patients. It's a pilot study, so we did about 10 patients for that. What we have seen was extremely interesting and also not really surprising either. So we kind of expected this, but it's amazing to see that though, is we saw a cortical thickness change in an area that affects anhedonia. That was very interesting. So we saw hippocampus thickness change. Okay, and there's a whole host of studies and a whole host of findings. And we saw a lateralization of changes, meaning right side, many structures on the right side, the cortical thickness actually reduced. And then the two areas on the left side, the cortical thickness actually increased. I can't tell you the details because the stuff is not published, so I don't want a headache, Thomas Ward who come back to me and says, hey, you said something that wasn't disclosed before, so we don't take the article off. So I can't go to the details. But this will come out in January and February. Yolanda is going to give me that to you once I have it. And I promise you it's going to be quite shocking. But there is a problem with the study. The problem with the study is that this patient got better. Right? So we did 12 treatments. This patient, we did an MRI, symptomatically they're better. So the question is, did we make their brain anatomy change because their symptoms were better? Or did we actually change their anatomy? Answer is, I don't know. Okay, it's quite interesting though, because if you think about it, some of them, they do get better in other studies, but we have never seen MRI. To me, I think it's very possible the nerve block itself had a change in anatomy, but I can't prove it. And we literally don't know how to prove that, because the whole point of nerve block is the symptom better. So, it's a chicken and egg thing in this case. But from there, there's something else that's interesting. What if we stimulate, this time not for headache, This time, let's think about dementia. Let's think about stroke. Can we make other changes to the brain? And that is my interest. Okay, I think we can, as a physicians, if we can actually massage and alter the brain, that will give us endless therapeutic options for brain diseases. Okay. So we talk about this ongoing trial. I'm going to pass on here. This is a cool case. So when I was in Europe at the London Headache Symposium, the very last minute they said, hey, we want a case report. I said, okay, fine, I'll make one. So this is a patient I saw in last year, okay, May 2017. So in Dr. being in Indiana, so you know the snowbirds in the United States. So in the US, I'm from Chicago, so we have people who live in Chicago in the summer, and they live in Florida in the winter, okay, because Florida is warmer. So this lady, 74 years old from the Chicago region, and she lives in Florida in the winter, and she comes to see me after winter is over with severe headaches. She had allergy to Tegretol, gabapentin, because she tried those severe headaches, severe side effects, history of hypertension, high cholesterol, carpal tunnel surgery, and so forth. Her complaint was right-sided facial swelling and extreme sensitivity. Okay, and she had such bad pain, she was actually suicidal. This lady was in the office in tears, and she was on high-dose opioids, standard 200 milligrams 4 times a day. She had this since 2011. Okay, so she had this for a long time. What happened was she developed shingles, and so she had a post-hepatic ophthalmicus. She was on antiviral medications. Active lesion stopped, but it still hurt like hell. So they diagnosed her with post-hepatic ophthalmicus and trigeminal. Her treatment physician is Dr. Ditch, who's a friend of mine. He's at Naples, Florida. So he told the patient come and see me when she come back to Chicago. He has tried different medications, even phenylpatrin, dilaudid, and so forth. He has tried trigeminal nerve blocks, such as a supra-infraorbital, supratrochlear, auriculotemporal, occipital nerve block. Basically everything around the head he has tried, okay, including stellate ganglion nerve block and the right side SPG nerve block without success. Okay, so Dr. Ditch uses my device, so he actually already treated patient without success with Tx360, but he only treated on one side. So I look at the patient and go, I'm going to give you bilateral treatment. I did a 12, pain was 50% reduced, medication was 50% reduced. I did again, fantastic. I discharged in August of 2017. But that's not the story. Here's the story. So she come back to me this year, right? I discharged in August. March, she come back. She come back early because the pain come back. It's severe. Her face is red again. She was sweating. She's back on the standard 20 milligrams. Dr. Ditch tried bilateral nerve block without success. She goes, oh my God, what do I do now? So I decided I'm going to try this again. I did 12 nerve block. I wasn't thinking. I said, well, he tried 12, maybe he did it wrong, let me try again. Guess what? I was wrong, it didn't work. But then I started asking her history and physical, right? So I started asking her stories. I go, hey, what makes your pain worse? She goes, my pain is worse with chewing nuts or tough sticks. So I'm thinking, maybe I missed something. Maybe I missed TMJ. Okay? So I put my finger in her mouth. She had tenderness and internal TMJ joint. Not outside, only inside. So I'm like, interesting. So I'm an oral surgeon, turns out she had an impacted tooth. At 75, the tooth was surgically removed, did 12 nerve block, she was fine, discharged. This actually happened, not too long ago, okay? Because by the time she heals from the oral surgery, come back to see me was already, I think, August, and I did the nerve blocks in September, and she was discharged in October. So actually, before I went on this trip, she was in my office with a full basket because she went to Florida again. The reason I show it is because here's the issue with nerve blocks. Nerve block is a physiologic. If the nerve block don't work, you really have to think, is there a secondary issue? Because we always treat this patient based on empirical treatment, empirical experiences. Right? Patient shows up, we treat them, they don't get better, we'll move on to the next one with medications. So sometimes, if you think about the treatment of trigeminal neuralgia, you have a list of different medications. You try one that doesn't work, go to the second one, go to the third one, go to the fourth one. The issue with the nerve block is this. Nerve block is a physiology and anatomy. When nerve block doesn't work, you gotta think physiology and anatomy. So in my practice, I have diagnosed tumors, aneurysm, C2, C23, C34, cervical disc can cause headaches. Okay, those issues can cause headaches. So you look for that. TMG is very common, but the most common thing I've found is the behavior. Patient behavior make their headache worse. That's something we have to discuss with them about. Very happy, very sad, a lot of chocolate. The most common thing is getting drunk. Getting drunk really will cause your headache to come back, and frankly, there's nothing I can do about it. So when that happens, all you can do is repeat nerve block. So behavior modification is important. For the 3 new doctors who come here later on, for children, remember video games and iPhone use, okay, social media. These kids, they use this. I mean, if you have kids, your kids are probably using this right now, and they, at night they put a blanket over their head, and the blanket they play these video games, and if they have headaches, this thing, unless they stop that, they will always have headaches. And that's the most common non-response I get in children is because of video games. I see this more often than anything else. Okay, so that's everything. Sorry for the mishaps earlier with the computer and so forth. Any questions?
So the final target, equal or hard? Do we have to rare? Because there is many incidents that from the
Right. I think for those patients, a physical examination, they typically will tell you if they have an allergy attack, they have sinus headaches, this will not work. Actually, that brings an important question. If the patient have a cold, will this work? The answer is no. Because mixed membrane is too thick, the nerve block doesn't work. The medication doesn't penetrate. It only happens in healthy, we can only do this for healthy patients. Okay? So sinusitis patients, if you think they have sinusitis, I would suggest to put them on augmenting for 7 days or something. It's not contraindication to treatment.
Why use 12 sessions, not every month, every 2 weeks? There's a study which was done in Bahrain by Bahrain. We used the monthlies. It was phenotype, I suppose, to use.
So, it's really about neuromodulation to train and give a long-term report. You need to have frequency. That's a key.
So you don't have comparison, 1 monthly course, 2 weeks course compared to 12 sessions?
No, I don't have a comparison for that. It would be an extremely costly study to do, especially, frankly, open label study, in my opinion, has a very limited scientific value. So when you perform, the gold standard is double-blind randomized. So, and then placebo control, of course. And when you do that kind of study, the number of patients needed for monthly versus a 12-month block, it will be tremendous. That will be, you're looking at a $50 million study, and frankly, that's not something I can afford. But empirically, I think in order for long-term benefit for most patients, repetition is the key. You need to do this repetitively, simply because of neuromodulation. And this is something I learned from an anesthesia pain physician perspective is when you perform this repetitively, I can achieve neuromodulation for patients with a complex regional pain syndrome for upper and lower extremities. It's really something I borrowed from that experience.
So you're not talking about hearing. You can hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I have 60 slides to entertain you. Okay. We spend the whole night. Okay. So I'll tell you my biased UAE experience or Dubai experience of same kind.
Okay.
All right. Okay.
By the way, they won't be in business today.
So I'll tell you my bias here. I'm just going to tell you observational trials, basically based on seeing patients, doing the treatment, and seeing how they do. So I chose patient with chronic migraine, cluster headache, facial pain, and probably they have tried one or two prophylactic medications they haven't improved because I have to convince them I should be giving them an expensive treatment, right? Number one, insurance, I would struggle with insurance. Number two, patients are willing to pay business class trip to States, coming back and forth, but they don't want to pay one penny for the treatment. That's an experience I have. Those patients who are not willing to use medication, and give them this option. And I tell them, I don't have good evidence for it, but I'm trying it for you and see how it does. I usually use this approach, the 1 monthly course, or once injection every month, for 3 months or 6 months, then I see them regularly. And I've been using this since April 2018. I was able to recruit 17 patients. 2 of them had cluster headache. I chose 2 with atypical headache, and I didn't know what to do. Then I told them, okay, let's try this one, see. 1 child with migraine headache, now we can 2 child with this. And 12 with migraine headache. Most of them had severe NIDA score. All of them were above 21. And that's what I found. All of them had excellent results within 24 hours. All of them. RAS score reduced from 10 to at least more than 50%. It was going down to 1, 2 sometimes. And it was lasting for 24 hours. I used the cluster headache, but I used 1 monthly injection for 3 months. And they had headache freedom. They were having no headache at all. 0 headaches. So the cluster headache, for my opinion, were having excellent results. And I was using only 1 monthly course. 2 of them had no follow-up, and I don't know what happened to them. And I just heard from Yolanda that they didn't improve, but I don't know about it because they tell other people different media. I had one.
Every neurologist, I know 2 doctors that mentioned they had one.
I had one patient yesterday, and flight attendant, he said, I didn't improve, doctor. I said, well, just tell me what happened. I had a recording of his last 3 months headache. She had 17 severe headache days. And when I gave her a SPG block, she had 1 severe headache in the last 3 months. I said, we have 1 severe headache. And you're worried about, but she said, doctor, was very severe. It's still 1 severe headache as opposed to 17. So people always remember the severe headache. So no follow-ups. I don't know what happened, but 2 of them had no headache at all, 0 headaches for 3 months, and that was they were given monthly course of injections, once per month. 7 out of them had 50% reduction of headache days. But the atypical one, the one with atypical headaches and psychosomatic pain, I wasn't sure what type of headache they had, they did not improve. I gave them even 3, 4 injections, no improvement. I stopped it. So my conclusion is, if you want to give it for acute management, it's very good. works for 24 hours. For most of my patients, they needed a repeat before 1 month. So they needed at least after 2 weeks at least. They had no effect, no minimal effect of the atypical facial pain, but I found cluster headache were having most favorable effect. I mean, that's the only observation from it. So that's my bias and my practice.
You did 1 injection for 3 months, 2 observations. You give 1 injection only
For 2 of them, I gave 1 injection,
for 3 months.
no headaches for 3 months.
So maybe if there is no recurrent headache, you don't give the next injection.
They didn't come here.
Ah.
So they came after 3 months, they told me, oh, I'm having a headache now. That's why I need another one. So I gave them.
Gays are now offering to help us promote this with their membership. So obviously they're interested in this because they see it as cheaper than Botox. And they've already approved Botox, so they're saying this is a better alternative in terms of them saving money.
Yeah, because 12 sessions, I'm not sure it's cheaper than Botox.
It is. It is. We went through the math.
You can share the matrix with me.
It's not.
Well, the price you took for Botox, a very good price.
The price for Botox, how much?
It's less than 5,000 dirhams per 3 months. Less than 5,000 dirhams per 3 months.
Consultation?
And the medication and everything.
What's that? 5,000 dirham is what? Well, I don't remember.
$1,300.
How much? 1,400?
1,400 US.
Yeah, $400. That's a lot. That's a lot. Because in the US model, the annual cost is $1,700. Annual cost is $1,700. You're talking about 1,400 every 3 months.
Yeah, but ask how much is the CPT code? What is the cost of the CPT code? What's the cost of that?
Oh, the CPT code, that's for the procedure only. It doesn't include the
Okay, and how-
thing.
what's
So
the
then
cost
you
of-
have to put the disposable on top. And we're still working on which, what's the disposable code for that?
Well, we know at City Hospital, they have approved it as a procedure for 4,500 per single session. Yes.
12 sessions a month.
At City. You can ask him. I'm an orthopedic surgeon, I didn't know, but he knows. This is procedure fees for you guys,
Yeah. So much.
For the hospital.
but that's the insurance paid. For me, if the insurance will pay, why you mind?
For the cash.
For cash,
Huh?
I don't know.
Excuse me, how much is the Botox market in US?
Depends on how much you buy, but the cheapest price in the United States is $6 per unit. So every box is $600.
I think in your spinal they have it between 800 to 1,200 dirham.
Yes, the
For
code
the
64505, according to the insurance.
Depends on the agreement between the hospital
Yeah.
and the insurance. Each hospital has a different price for the procedure.
64505.
So I'm going to show the video on here as we discuss. You can see how that works in the animation. That I want to show in actual model.
Is this a video for physicians or is this a video for patients?
It's on my website, and Yolanda's going to give you guys access. Europe.canmedical.com, and it's also on canmedical.com. Botox in the States is, I think most people get it at $800 per bottle. I do quite a bit, so I get at $600 per bottle.
The MOH price is $1,020 per bottle. I don't know what the hospitals are negotiating, but that's the MOH price, $1,020 dirhams per bottle.
I have
But you know
my clinic, I give it for CP patient. I get it for 1,000 dirham for vial. It depends on how many units is
And then
there
every time you
also.
do the Botox treatment, you're throwing away 45 units.
Yeah, that's the other thing.
No, we're not.
Oh, you're not.
How are you getting around?
You need the 3 vials.
2 patients at the same time,
How
right?
are you getting around? Hello?
Watching this.
Let us.
Yeah. No, it's a 2 patients. When you do 2 patients, you don't have to listen. So obviously I'm talking in a video, so I don't want to go through a 17 minutes boring video, but as we said. So it shows us a right nostril and left nostril. That's what happened. Remember that? The question on that? So you have to enter the nose first. And then you push out. Okay? Remember the young girl right there? That's what happened.
So are you entering horizontal?
No, you can't. Because the opening is lower than half palate. If you enter the horizontal, all you do is hit.
But that looked horizontal. That's why I'm
Go back.
Right. Here, let me go back a second.
Deep. You have to go above the bone and then.
حبيبي أنا فلسطيني. I want to go through the bone. To show like this.
Here.
You see?
You just lift it.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, that's it.
Rafa.
But lift it, just lift it, don't push it in, don't push it, don't press against the patient's nose, just lift it.
And also, when you're doing
What do you mean?
when you're doing procedure, don't force the device into the patient. You gotta hold it. Because I've seen this with physicians, they just jamming this in the patient nose. No, you gotta hold it. Because you're not jamming it into the patient nose. I'll do like training.
Yeah. What about should we do the dinner? Can we bring the dinner while we're doing?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
So I'm just talking. I mean, I can bring the volume up like that. Like 2. I'm bring the camera also. So that's what happened. There's a straight distance that covers the square footage. Let's finish this and then we'll start.
She has a Marcel.
You want to pass a piece to every single doctor? Sure. No, pass a piece to every. We'll have enough. So.
Where you said that normal saline is not a placebo? How?
Yeah, normal saline is not. I made a mistake. Normal saline is therapeutically active. If you talk to
Therapeutically active where?
For nerve blocks. So normal saline for nerve blocks. This is a well-known among anesthesiologists. And so anytime we do a nerve block with normal saline, it actually works. So it is not. It's actually therapeutic.
Sodium content?
I should have known. I wasn't thinking at the time I did a study back in 2013 when I did that. So if I didn't use normal saline, I'd probably get positive results. When I used normal saline, so because normal saline was working. So Sodium.
Yeah, you can open it.
Yeah, because sodium is mostly still osmotic when you inject into people. I mean, obviously it's not very effective. It doesn't last long. But doesn't. So if you look at an acute study, in my acute study, you're going to see at the 15 minutes, 30 minutes, almost is almost as effective as but 30 minutes by 24 hours, the effect goes. So, would you mind to pass that along to people? I just want you to see there's a nerve behind the middle turbinate, the little dot. Okay, so here, let me, Yolanda, why don't I do this? I'm going to mark. Do you have a pen on you or not?
Yeah, yeah.
You want this one? Does this work?
Yeah, that will.
Okay.
So, I'm going to pass this along so you see, okay? Does this little dot? No, that's not. Yeah, I can have a marker. So you're going to see this dot, okay? That's the target. This is actually life size. The funny thing is because of prevalence of a 3D CT scan, so we can actually measure it across.
Because you hold it.
Right. I'm going to actually show it. I'm actually going to pass this around. So there's a little dot behind middle turbinate. Okay. So I'm going to pass this around. So middle turbinate, the little dot, and this patient, okay, actually has a nasal septum deviation. Okay. So you have a nasal septum deviation. Where's my part? Okay, so I'm going to pass this along so everybody can see it. You want to kind of the other one?
This cheesecake is good.
Good, stick to me a little bit. That's good. Alright, so the device is very tricky, okay? The device is very tricky. Again, the first time you do it, I guarantee you do it wrong. So I'm going to show it, and if you guys are interested, go ahead and open one, okay? Just open it.
You will stop eating when you're doing it. Just say it.
Well, why don't we do this then?
concentrate.
Won't take long with desserts. Let's finish dessert. Right now, any question, any clinical questions? Well, I want them to finish. This makes bupivacaine very effective, right? There's something else that's also this will make very effective. It's also cane. Can you guess on which one? That's the reason why. Please lock this and throw this away. This is going to make cocaine a heck a lot more effective. Because I think it's just too close to the brain. Okay? And I actually believe SPG alters the brain. So cocaine can enter the brain too easily with this. Okay? Right. So you're going to grab this, pretend this is medications. Right? So we're going to get a medication. When you tap to get an air out, just always tap at the bottom. Okay? Get an air out. So now we have 0.6 cc's. Okay, on here. Remove the little shipping clip. Remove it. I know I make this easy. Trust me, by the time you do it, this is going to be a problem for you. Especially with the guys. Because your fingers are big. Okay, with girls it'll be easy. Okay. So remove the shipping clip and put this back onto the 0.366. This is the reason why that Yolanda is going to send you enough samples for you to destroy until you feel like this is second nature. Okay, this is very important. Okay, so now you have this 0.6 cc in field. Okay, right. Now you're going to grab this. When you grab this, this is a thumbs up. At all times, this is pointing up. Okay, this thing pointing up. Trust me. After I said that, I seen physician doing this into the patient. It's not going to work because that's going to go to the throat. Okay, that's the point up. And then here's a syringe, here's a device. Do never push this. The first thing is to do is people push. It's, when you push, you're not going to lock. This is like a gun. it's a lock and a load. Okay, so it's like a safety for the gun. Unless you put a safety on, you load it, it's going to be a problem. It's not going to work. It's like a handgun. So, right, Doc? It's kind of hard to take that off. So now you're going to.
Wrong with the design.
I am actually changing that a little bit. So grab this, push it here. Okay. This is called a push rod. Do not touch the push rod until the very end. Don't touch this. So all you do, the white part is a push rod. Okay. All you do is rotate until here.
Click.
Click. Okay. Do not push. Just rotate until here. Click. There you go. You heard that. When you have a click, right. When you hear a click, this arrow is a straight line in the middle.
When you hit the click, you push it.
This whole thing is all designed based on that. Okay, it's in the middle. All right. So we just locked the syringe. Now I'm gonna load it. Okay. Grab here, grab the syringe, grab the device, load it. Second click. Okay.
Okay.
So lock and load.
Then load. And which side is right, left?
So
No matter.
right, no matter. So I'm in. Right now you have a right nostril and left nostril. Okay. And all you do to whatever nostril is to turn from here, either left or right. That's all you do. Okay. So now it's loose a little bit. Okay.
It's not gonna work again. You locked it.
What I said, the first time you use it, I guarantee you're gonna make a mistake. Okay.
Just turn to the right.
Right.
After we push the
So
medicine, it will lock.
you guys missed what I showed earlier. So there was a patient was sitting position, right? So we're gonna probably try this out.
What happened? You know, I went to the right. Now it's loose.
Okay, so now
Alright.
it's on the track.
So in a little bit, we're gonna try this on Yasmin. Okay. So
that's
patient is in sitting position, right? You guys all saw the girl earlier. Patient sitting position, patient head is supported. I want you to stand over the patient. Okay. It's very important, especially with female physicians, because for your male patients, they're too big for you to control. You have to stand over them. Put a hand on their head so they don't move. And the key here is do it quick. The reason I want you to do it on yourself first is that's the only way you can do it quick. You gotta remember, if you do it slow, the patient will start moving again. You see how quick I was with the girl. I think I spent 3 seconds to do it, right? That's how quick this is. So that's how quick you have to be. When you can do this yourself for 3 seconds, you can do this on patient for 3 seconds. Okay? So patient sitting. This patient's head is extended, as you can see, right? The face is extended. So put this in the patient's face, okay? So now I'm in the patient nostril. Lift until 90 degrees. This is 90 degrees. So you feel resistance, you stop. Don't do this. This is what happened in Europe, in England. This doctor was doing this for patients. The patient says it works, but it hurts. I said, what happened? Can you show it to me? He goes, he was going like this. Don't do that. It hurts the patient. Push in, 90 degrees, stop. If the patient head is facing,
Posterior, anterior.
what do you mean posterior? No, yeah, exactly, and anterior, posterior. Right, sorry, anterior, posterior. So 90 degrees, right? You can see it here. So this is on hard palate, 90 degrees, okay? At this point, hold it on one hand, turn. You see how easy that goes in? In real patient, that's how easy that goes in. The only problem is Northern European, especially French. Their nose sometimes can be very narrow.
Do you put just to walk step back one
Sure.
time? Do you put the nasal path before you put it in, or do you put it once it's inside?
Which side?
You know, you
Oh,
said
I
turn
usually,
it,
so for me, I have this done so many times in my head, so I know exactly where. I think it's better if you put in than you choose a side. But the problem is you have to know what you're doing, because that's what happened with one time was one physician goes, it only works 50% of the time because he was making 50% of mistakes. Here's the thing, if this doesn't work, okay, only 3 possibilities. You didn't do it right, patient have abnormal anatomy, or patient have underlying illness.
Doesn't work meaning what? What does doesn't work
Clinically,
mean?
no
Nerve block didn't
response.
work. Meaning the nerve block didn't work.
No response.
No, but look, nothing works 100%. So are you talking about the response for the first 24 hours?
I'm talking, yes, that's correct. So, nothing works for 100% for medications, but nerve block works 100%.
Occipital nerve blocks don't work 100%.
Not in terms of for symptomatic relief, but in terms of, actually, what you said is actually not true on that. Occipital nerve block itself works 100% if the nerve block works right. So I'm an anesthesiologist, so this is what happened. We do nerve block for every single surgery, right? Every single shoulder surgery we do interscalene ganglion nerve block. If the interscalene ganglion nerve block doesn't work, you know what happened? The anesthesiology did it wrong, period. The crazy thing about nerve block is the only reason nerve block didn't work is because you didn't do it right. Because this is an anatomy, period.
Yeah, but blocking the nerve isn't synonymous with relieving the pain.
That's true, I agree. But blocking the nerve will have some effect. In this case, because it has some sensation, some sensory nerve to it, you're going to have some numbness patient will feel, not just some kind of congestion in the nose. So you're going to have some symptomatic pain. And occipital nerve block, for example, if that didn't work for cluster headaches, that's possible. But occipital nerve block itself will create numbness for where the nerve block was performed because the nerve was blocked. So in this case, you should see some kind of response from the nerve block. If the patient has a zero response, it's because it wasn't done right. And then the second thing is anatomical anomaly. So here's an anatomical anomaly you have to know on this. Down syndrome. Okay, Down syndrome patients is going to have abnormal nose. So I can't guarantee results on that.
What syndrome?
Down syndrome.
Down syndrome.
Cleft palate. Okay, cleft palate patient, they have abnormal anatomy, so I can't guarantee you that. Okay, we talk about nasal polyps. Then the other one is devious septum, unless it's extreme devious septum, it's not a problem. Because if you look at devious septum, first of all, devious septum occurs in 90% of patients.
Oh, okay.
And devious septum only happens in the bony part.
You're an Egypt?
It never happens in the bony part. It only happens in the cartilage part. Can devious septum happen in the bony part? Yes. If the devious septum happens in the bony part, it's not
baby.
the bony part devious septum is typically trauma. There was nasal trauma for me.
That's right.
It feels so hard. There was a fracture.
Totally different
Which
than
leads
this
to
place,
another one, nasal, past nasal fractures. Past nasal fracture, this will not work. So there's another question I have is what if
13% of my
patient
DNA
nasal surgery, plastic surgery?
is
You know what?
South Egypt,
That's
North
actually
Sudan.
perfect. Because plastic surgeon just put that nose back perfectly. So that's not a contraindication, okay? And then cocaine user and a syphilis. Cocaine user and syphilis, yeah, have perforations, so this may not work. You gotta remember that one. So that's, I can't change anatomical anomaly. I can only say that for most patients this happens.
Did you mention the Down syndrome? Because yesterday
did.
we talked about it.
Yeah, I mentioned Down syndrome earlier. So
So when you push this, is that the time it's sprayed or?
I thought you were inside.
goes inside first. So the step by step.
Oh,
Right.
did you do some for me?
Yes.
90 degrees.
Flash?
That's where
Turn. Whichever side you choose.
now
At end.
in. Yeah, now you push.
Quick. Quick.
Fast.
It's done. Okay.
Yeah.
Now you take it out.
Take the whole thing out. You saw what I did with that girl earlier.
And then you go here, and then you go.
But before you go to the second side, you have to remove that.
Uh-huh.
Once you remove it, it's done. It won't spray again.
Sure.
It won't work again. That's the second.
We got them for both noses.
Okay.
You
So
have to tilt.
so what you did was
Right
you
side.
push very hard in. So this whole thing in is fine. All you have to do is turn slight, and then you back on the
Why is
time.
this not coming all the way in?
Also you turn. So you turn around and around. So you broke a guide. Okay. So when you turn,
Suppose
you
one
can only
way by
turn
one.
either this way or this way, not around and around. Don't worry. Again,
Why is this one sticking out like this?
that's
After the
because
first nostril.
that's because he pushed it into the reservoir. Here, let me fix it. Let me show it to you. So what happened is, there are two tracks. Okay. So now you're in the reservoir in the middle. So that's why it's sticking out. All you have to do is turn it slightly back on the track. There's a twin track. You heard that?
Okay.
That's fine.
There you go.
Okay. So again, it is a toy. You actually have to learn how to play it.
Can we see the other head so he can?
Sure.
Try
It's
it.
not. Remember, you're gonna help some patients, and you're gonna probably, in private practice at least, you're gonna, make some money. It's not that easy to make some money. You gotta actually learn how to do this. So,
And again, one more time. Here, I'm gonna spray you. Over her.
see that?
And you saw how it went like that down the hose.
That covers all the anatomical anomaly. So here's what happened. Push it in, push it down, to one side, all the way down, in this process, and then
So you can see.
we're done.
And go to that.
Yeah. When you take out, you don't have to do this and then take it. Just take everything out.
You can still use this. See how-
When you take out, it will stop at half and then again you can.
Yeah, and then what happens is when you take out, to do the other side, you remove the clip. Okay, you remove the red clip.
It's on YouTube.
Yeah, it's also on YouTube. You remove
So,
the red.
yeah, so you really, if you push it to the end, still it will give only 0.3.
That's correct.
It's okay.
It's all pre-calculated.
You don't
Okay.
need to look or.
No, you don't need to think. You don't need to look. It's all pre-calculated.
We have the video better because however much you say, we'll do the same.
Yeah, exactly. You had a video, and you have to have. And I think it's about 5 devices, and you do it on yourself. Please, you can do it yourself. And this is kind of cool, actually.
I'm not allowed to go on wife.
That's up to her. You're gonna see tear in the eye. Tear in the eye is very important. It's kind of cool. It's like your knee reflex. You're gonna see tear in the eye, okay? Because trigeminal reflex.
You have to see it?
You don't have to see it, but I think you're going to see it. I don't think that there's an exception. I have never not seen it, and I've probably done 1,000 patients by now 1 time. Okay, so that's pretty much everything. Now, when you inject, don't inject.